This video is going to cover how to graph and find solutions for a system of inequalities. We need to remember that inequalities are the equations that have the inequality, so a greater than or less than symbol in them. If they have equal to signs, then they're just equations. But since this has a greater than symbol and the one underneath has a less than symbol, these are both inequalities. So what we're looking for is where these two graphs, their shaded areas with all of their solutions for each one, come together and overlap or cross each other, and those would be solutions for both problems. So we're going to start first by graphing the first one, and then we'll graph the second one, and then we'll see where all the answers come together. Before we can graph either one of these, we need to turn them into slope-intercept form. We need to turn them into y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I'm going to do with the first equation is to change the sign on the x. So it's going to go from positive to negative. And I'm going to move it over to the other side of the inequality symbol. So it's like I'm picking up the 3x and I'm just moving it over here to this side. So that's going to give me 2y on the left and negative 3x minus 2 on the right. After that, we have to divide everything by the number in front of the y. In this case, it is a positive 2. So I'll divide every term by positive 2. These would cancel out just to give me y. Negative 3 divided by 2, I'm going to leave that as a fraction so I can use that as my slope. Negative 2 divided by positive 2 is negative 1. Now, because we divided by a positive number, we do not have to flip this inequality symbol. It's still going to be a greater than or equal to symbol. Right? Had this 2 been negative or any other negative number in front of the y and we divided everything by it, we would have had to have flipped the inequality symbol the other way. So, graph. So now I'm going to take this inequality, and I'm going to graph it on the graph. So I'm going to start or begin with my b number, with my y-intercept. That's negative 1. We'll draw a dot there. Then I'm going to use my slope or my m number to move and find other points on the line so that I can use it. Since it's negative 3, that means I'm going down 3 units, and I always go over to the right. So over 2 to the right. So from here, I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, and over 2 to the right. And I could do it again and make my line straighter, but that's not really an option on this graph. So I'm just going to go backwards real quick and draw some more dots. And you can see this is going to be our first line. Now it's time to draw the line. Since we have the equal to symbol, it's going to be a solid line. So I'm going to get a little straight edge here. Make sure I do it straight. Okay. Then I have to determine which side I want to shade on this line. Again, we have a greater than symbol, which usually means that we shade above the line. Okay. So I'm just going to shade up. I know that these are my answers. I don't want to go too crazy with the shading yet because I'm going to have to put another line on this same graph, another inequality, and I don't want to get confused about which ones are which. So I'm just going to draw these red lines to remind me that this is the shaded side on this first one. Now I'm going to use a different color for the second one. And again, first thing we have to do is turn this inequality into y equals mx plus b, or slope-intercept form. So I'm going to do that by making this x negative and moving it over to the other side of the equation. I'm going to slide down here for a little bit more room. So I still have 2y on the left. I now have negative x on the right side with positive 2. Just like with the first one, we're going to have to divide both sides by positive, or everything by positive 2, so that we can get the y by itself. Divide everything by 2. This is negative 1x over 2. Remember, just because you don't see a number there doesn't mean that there's not an invisible 1 in front of that x. So that's going to be negative 1 over 2x. and then 2 divided by 2 is 1. Dividing by a positive means I don't have to flip this inequality symbol, so it's still less than or equal to. So now we're going to graph it just like we did the first one. I'm going to start with my B number with my y-intercept. That's where I begin my graph at positive 1. So I'm going to draw a dot on the y-axis at 1. I will now use my slope or my m number to move and find other points. Negative 1 means I'm going to go down 1, and I always go to the right, so I'm going to go over 2 to the right. So down 1, over 2, down 1, over 2. And then I can draw the other way to make sure it's straight. Again, we have an equal to sign, so that means I'm going to draw a solid line. If the equal to sign wasn't there, it would be a dashed line. So let me get this here. Let's draw the line. Okay. Line was drawn. Now I need to shade the part with the answers. I have a less than symbol. That means I'm going to shade below this line. So I'm just going to draw all these lines in. And you can see that this area, this triangle right here, this is the area that has all of our solutions. Any point that I pick in this double shaded area would be a solution to both of these inequalities. It would make both of these inequalities true if I plugged in those x and y numbers. All right, so any point here, I could pick this point right here, which is -1, 1. That would work. I could pick this point down here, which is +5, -5. Any of the points in here would work. So I'm going to make sure and shade this area to signify that these are the points that I'm looking for. And again, to write down a solution, I can pick any one of these points in there. All right. So I could even use the origin, 0, 0. I'm just going to pick this point right here because it's kind of in the middle. That's the point where x is +1 and y is -1. But again, any of these points in here would work and make both of these inequalities true statements.